Does anybody here remember what I said at the beginning of the year with a book haul that I did that I was like, I'm not gonna buy no more books? I lied. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Alana and I have a problem with saying no to books, which is why we're here, which is why I have a YouTube channel. So I'm gonna dive into these books because I have I have a really random assortment of books that I have picked up since really only within the past month. Yeah. But I will say, I'm going to try to be so good after this. Um, there are a few books I want to get that are going to be released in May. Two of which is only four, but two of which I will be reading this year. But other than that, um, this won't be happening again for the rest of the year. So this one I've actually already started. This is Catch 22. I am reading this as a buddy read. Please hold. Ow. It's poking me in my eye. My nose itches. Catch 22. This is a buddy read with a friend of mine. So we've already started it. We read Dracula together, so that was our most recent buddy read, and then of course whenever we finish one we move on to the next. And so I don't have much to say about this book yet. As you can see, I'm only about 50 pages in, and I will say there is something similar to this that I'm picking up on that's similar to Crime and Punishment, but as of now, again, I don't have much to say about Catch 22. It's chunkier than I thought it would be. It's set at the end of at the closing months of World War II, and the main character, Yozarian, am I pronouncing that right? He is furious that these people that he doesn't know are trying to kill him. My guy, you in a war, okay? People gonna try to kill you. But yeah, this is a satire, but I'm kind of going into this book pretty blind, and I want to keep it that way. But yeah, Catch 22. Plunk. We have In Search of Lost Time, Volume 2, Within a Budding Grove. So I recently have finished Swan's Way, Volume 1 of In Search of Lost Time, which is just over 600 pages in my edition of Swan's Way. I actually will not be reading this book this year. I think I'm going to read a volume of Swan's Way a year, which means it's going to take me 6 years to complete, but so be it. I enjoyed Swan's Way. There's a lot to digest. I'm still digesting it, even though I finished it a few weeks ago at this point. I will be doing a review on it, but I kind of need to get my thoughts together. That was also a buddy read, and I would highly recommend buddy reading that with somebody if you can, but I'll kind of get into that a little bit more when I review it. But I know that I'm going to read the second volume next year, so I went on and snagged it. This is a weird cover, I'm not going to lie. This cover kind of creeps me out, but I like the feel of the modern library editions. They just are nice and floppy, and I just like the way they feel. So I'm going to stick with this particular set. This book is heavy. This is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. The Count of Monte Cristo, Dumas. I actually already own a copy of this book, but I was watching somebody do a reading vlog of this book, and I found out that I had an abridged version. The Penguin Classics edition that is translated by Robin Buss is considered to be the definitive translation of this work. It is completely unabridged. And even though many of the unabridged versions are still over 1,000 pages long, there are things that have been tweaked depending on when it was translated to kind of appeal to whatever culture was going on at that time. So I know that in older translations of this, when it was being translated into English, some things were changed or taken out, or maybe more softly alluded to for that particular English society at that time. But I was like, you know what? No, my first read of this, I want it to be completely unabridged. So I went on and snagged this one. I will still hold on to my my older copy, and it's just anonymous. They just have anonymous translators. But I'm going to hold on to it because in the instance that I want to reread this, I'll read this one first and then reread the other version later and just kind of compare the two. This book is heavy. I think this is over 1,200 pages. Yep, but for a novel that is of this size, I've heard it's a page turner. So I do like the floppiness of these editions, not gonna lie. But here we go. So again, I'm reading this year. I'll read it this summer. I'm saving this one for July. There's just something about a big, chunky page turning classic that's going to fit my summer needs when it's 100 degrees outside with 98% humidity. Don't like it. What is it about the Penguin classics that are so squishy to hold, so satisfying? Okay, hold on. Why are these different? This is like, I have other Penguin classics. This one is entirely matte. Usually it has like a shiny cover here, a more lacquered look. And even the type of paper that they use is completely different than my normal Penguin classics. And then this one here is completely shiny. What's going on? And I know that they've actually kind of tweaked their design again, which I actually prefer the new design. But anyway, this is a Victorian classic, Lorna Dune by R.D. Blackmore. And this is actually set, I want to say it's set in the 1600s. It's set in the, I want to say it's set in the 1600s. Don't know if it's set in the 1500s, but he's writing a historical novel, a romanticized version, a romanticized period of whatever I really want to say is the 1600s. So Lorna Dune is not a Victorian that I really typically see many people talk about. It's actually, there are not that many reviews on it on YouTube. There are not a ton of reviews of it on Instagram. There are more reviews of it on, say, Amazon or Goodreads, but this is not a classic that I see a lot of people talking about. There is a BBC adaptation that was done in 2000, and I believe there's an adaptation that was done in the 90s and maybe in the 70s as well. I've only seen the 2000 version, and I recently watched the 2000 adaptation sometime last summer. I watched it twice, and it's definitely got that late 90s, early 2000s corniness to it, but I mean that in the best way. There was definitely something nostalgic about it, and I think I actually saw it as a youth back in the day, when my family and I were living in Connecticut. I don't know, there were certain images that I remembered, and I was like, no, I've seen this, I just didn't remember it. So this is a ramble. What is Lorna Dune about? So Lorna Dune, you have the main character, John Ridd. He is hopelessly, desperately, and completely and totally in love with Lorna Dune. But Lorna Dune is from the family that killed his father when he was a wee bairn. Who's at the front door? Somebody at the front door. And so somebody in her family killed his father. And so it's just this romanticization of the setting in which Blackmore is writing about. And I've heard that the language is really beautiful. I've heard that the way that it's written is a bit almost mystical or fantastical in some ways. This is going to ramble a little bit because it is a Victorian novel, right? And it's probably a lot longer than it needs to be. This is just over 800 pages. But actually, no. It's just under 800 pages. But there's something about the BBC adaptation that I find really comforting. And I'm kind of in the urge to watch it again. So I was like, you know what? I want to read the book. And I don't know when I'll get to it. Maybe I'll get to it next year. I might actually accompany this with the audiobook and kind of read alongside. But I really do prefer to read the classics as hard copies, and I can annotate the crap out of them. But yes. And the ending, I mean, I know the story. The ending is insane. Like, it's Thomas Hardy type stuff, if you know what I mean. So yeah, I'm gonna move on from this. My literary love. I have 2 Dostoevskys here. I will be reading these within the next year. Anybody else planning their 2023 reading lists? I am. I'm planning my 2023 reading list already. I plan to read all of Dostoevsky's works in my lifetime and then reread them and then reread them again. He is my literary crush. All because of the Brothers Karamazov. I love that book. I still think about that book. The other day, I picked up the Brothers Karamazov and was just flipping through the pages. There was a passage that I stumbled upon, and I was like, hit me in the gut, my guy. Hit me in the gut. I love Dostoevsky. He's a genius. And so I have decided to go ahead on and get The Idiot and Notes from the Underground. And again, it is possible for Dostoevsky to write a slim novel or a slim volume of something. And I have The Idiot that is, how long is this? Over 600 pages. But yeah, these are going to be my next Dostoevsky reads. He is my literary crush, becoming one of my favorite writers of all time. My boy D-Money. Now we are going to get into some other book. We are completely gearing all the way to the other side of the planet after I mentioned the first book. No, that's not true, because Russia is This is a book I never thought I would pick up. This is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. So, several weeks ago, I would probably say January, early February, somebody was reviewing this that I watch on that I follow on Instagram, and her comments about the book were really interesting. And she mentioned how it's really like a Victorian fantasy, because Susanna Clarke does set this book in Victorian England, and that the way that it's written and the style in which it's written, it reads like an authentic Victorian novel. And then my YouTube friend, who has a channel, A Literary Princess, she was talking about fantasy reads, and I will link her video down below. And she mentioned this book, and I had completely forgotten about it after I read somebody's Instagram post about the book. And she said something very similar in how, this is a big book, but how it's a very different type of fantasy, because it is, again, set in Victorian England and reads as if it really is a Victorian novel. And I've heard other reviewers of this book since say that if you are a fan of Dickens and the way that he writes, this is very reminiscent of that. And I like my boy Chuck. I really do. I had to warm up to my boy Chuck, but I do like him. And so this is the year 1806. And so we're also in the Napoleonic Wars. And so we have Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. And this is a world in which magic has completely gone out of England, but we have these two characters Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, who can still do magic. And so they're kind of bringing magic back to England in this case. So here we are. I don't know what I'm going to give to. I am always attracted to the bricks in the door stoppers. This is my edition. My particular copy is 1,000 pages long, and this has footnotes. There's something on my eyes driving me crazy. Look, here's a footnote. It takes up more than half the page, but that's when some people that bothers them when it comes to this book. But I can always appreciate when an author does something like this. Other authors have done this before her in their novels. Infinite Jest is another one. But at the time of Infinite Jest, which I have not read, that has a lot of footnotes, that was considered quite new and straddling some lines in fiction at that time. But now not so much, but still. If I get on with this book, I think I'll try to read Piranesi, and she has a little collection of short stories. So we'll see how I get on with this, but I think that this is appealing to me more right now than Piranesi. We are on to the Japanese fiction. So in all of these, I actually plan to read by the end of next year, all of these Japanese fiction books. All right, so this is a book that has been sitting in my cart online for several months. And so I was like, you know what? Let's just go ahead and purchase it because it's already on my tentative 2023 reading list. But I do plan to read this next year. Again, another doorstopper, another 1,000-page novel. This is really 3 volumes in one. Q-Teen 84. Yes, it is pronounced Q-Teen 84, not 1Q84. Again, a play on 1984 by George Orwell. This cover is weird to me, but I like the spine. Not relevant to the story. A lot of people don't like this book. But I have a friend, Christy Lewis. She was like, I would love to hear your take on this book. She's reading it right now. She was like, I think you'll get a kick out of this. So that is, she was kind of like my final push to go ahead on and get the book. I don't even know how to describe this. Again, with the name Q-Teen 84, we're hearkening to some 1984 George Orwell dystopian type stuff. It's a love story. It's a mystery. It's a bit of a fantasy. And I've never read Murakami before. I know people either get on with him or they do not. And typically people will say Q-Teen 84 is not where you start with him. But I do what I want because I'm grown. And so this is what I'm going to do. I'm starting with Q-Teen 84. Don't at me. In the realm of dystopias, I have The Memory Police by, completely forgot the author's name. I have The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa. Another dystopian. So this is another one that's been sitting in my cart for a long time. And I was like, you know what? I know I'm going to read this book. So let me go ahead on and get it. And so again, this is echoing 1984, Fahrenheit 451 type stuff. Apparently also, it reminds people of 100 Years of Solitude, which I have not read, but I have read Fahrenheit 451 and 1984. Objects are disappearing. The inhabitants are oblivious to these changes and bringing them back. There's the draconian memory police who make sure that anything that has gone missing, it just remains forgotten. So again, I don't know too much about this book. I kind of want to go into it a little bit more blind. I don't want to dive too much into the plot. I was one that never really used to gravitate towards dystopians. As you can see, I've got 2 dystopians in here back to back, but over the past 2 years, my mom sent me a meme sometime last year with this bookstore that says if you're looking for the dystopian section, we've moved it to the current affairs section. And it was funny, but it wasn't funny at the same time. So I think maybe that's one reason why this is on my mind. But another reason why I did want to go ahead on and pick up this book is because one critique, actually this is not, I've seen it more than once. A critique of this book is that readers got frustrated that the characters just seemed so complacent, that they're living in this oppressive system and they just go with the flow. They're like, why don't you do anything about it? And I'm just sitting here and I'm thinking like, that's the point. Without reading this novel, I can tell you that's the point. And how can you say that and think of the last 2 years and not ask yourself some heavy questions about society and governments and so on and so forth? I'm not even trying to get on a political spectrum here. I'm just saying that the last 2 years don't make you think heavily about some things and the role of government and the state and how much does a person belong to the state? Do they belong to the state at all? And it really, most people are complacent. Some people argue about 2/3 of society is complacent and they just go with the flow. And then in hindsight, they'll say, oh, I didn't know. And we see that in history in the past. I mean, look at World War II. I didn't know what was going on. I was following orders. Yeah, that won't be an excuse. That's not an excuse. I'm getting off tangent. I was also a history major, so yeah, the complacency that you often find in human nature does not shock me. Yeah, so I kind of want to read this just because I think it's relevant for today. I really do. I also love this cover. Look at it. I just wish that they had made this eye, that's, this covering of her eye that says the memory, please, gold foil. That would be stunning. Maybe there are copies that have the gold foiling up there, but that would be beautiful. Let's get into the next two books. It's the final countdown. Do-do-do-do. These are from the Vintage Classics Japanese collection that Vintage Classics released over the past couple of years. And there are 5 books in this collection. I've selected 2. I've selected 2 of the biggest ones because, again, I can't resist a big book. I've got let me put this in my lap. Makioka Sisters by Tanizaki. It's a slow-moving kind of family saga, if you will. And so you have the Makioka sisters who, this is a point in time where you see a lot of change happening in Japan, and this is a prominent family, and they are kind of hearkening to an older, more traditional Japanese family / lifestyle. Culturally, it is traditional. They are traditional. But then you have the direction, the more modern, in some ways Western direction that Japan is going in. And so it's telling the tale of this family and these sisters. And I love family sagas. Okay. I'm reading Pachinko this year. I'm excited. I'm buddy reading that with a friend. And so when I read some reviews and I watched a review on this book, I was like, yeah, I need to read that. And apparently the very last sentence is polarizing. Most people are like, what? So that also piqued my interest because apparently he did something weird and they're like, my guy, you did all that and that's how you gonna wrap this up? So inquiring mind needs to know. I need to know. I need the tea. Out by Natsuyo. I believe it's Natsuyo Karino. Did I get the first name right? Natsuyo Karina. This is a thriller. And clearly I'm going to kick the thriller these days because I read The Turnout and then I have Mrs. March sitting in my queue that I want to read. And I've got some other thrillers that I kind of am interested in. So I used to not really be piqued that much by thrillers, yet here we are. So I have This Is Out, which is a thriller. And this woman murders her husband. And then there are a group of ladies, a few other ladies, who help her get rid of the body. And then it goes from there. Apparently this is a little dark and claustrophobic and tense. I'm here for it. I'm all about that life. So I'm hoping to get to this one, so again, my love of big books. Both of these are over 500 pages. I mean, chunksters, but it is what it is. I am done. And like I said, I'm really going to try to be good and not purchase too many more books for the remainder of the year. In May, again, there are going to be some books released that I'm going to be reading. The second installment of The Wolf Den by Lodi Harper, which was released last year and I really enjoyed. It is a historical fiction taking place in ancient Rome, which is a time period in fiction I cannot say no to. I devoured that book in just a few days. The sequel's coming out as a trilogy, and so I will be snagging that. I will have it shipped from the UK as soon as possible because I need to read it this summer. And then The Ballerinas is another ballet thriller that I want to read. And I think it was written by a person who was a dancer, or she's a ballerina. And it's already out, but I want the paperback version. I prefer a paperback over a hardback, so I'm going to wait for the paperback to be released in May. And then what else? Oh, Elif Batuman's sequel to The Idiot is coming out in May. And again, I want the first edition paperback to go ahead and get my hands on that, because I can't stand it once publishers start publishing all these, of extra on the covers of the books. It drives me crazy. So I want the first edition of that. I am reading The Idiot right now as of this video, and I'm really enjoying it. I was not expecting to. I'm kind of cynical when it comes to millennial fiction. Batuman is not a millennial, but it's her fiction straddles some lines, which is why I'm putting her in my reading project of millennial authors. But I'm really enjoying it. It is dry humor, like dry, but it is the kind of humor that I get. And I am laughing my way through that book. Is it the best thing I've ever read? No, but is it enjoyable? Yes. And so I will get the second installment. And then the only other book that I want to purchase as of May is the 6th and last installment of Alison Ware's series, The 6 Wives of Henry VIII. So I have the other 5. I was waiting for the paperback version of Catherine Parr, which was Henry VIII's last wife, because the man had 6 wives. He killed 2 of them by beheading them. I wanted that one. I was waiting for that one to be released as a paperback this year. So I'm just gonna, the version I want is the UK cover. So I'm going to wait until May when I order the second installment of The Wolf Den from the UK. I'll just order those together. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I do know, I'm still talking, but we're going to keep going. I do know that at the end of the year, I'm going to start again purchasing books that I want to read in 2023 that I currently don't own, which is actually not many. I want to start trying to reread Game of Thrones. I read the first 2 books, got into the third, and just went into a massive reading slump. And I was in a reading slump for 3 years. And so I want to kind of go back and try Game of Thrones again from the beginning with a clearer head. And so I will be picking up the masked paperback editions of the first 5 books. And actually, and Robin Hobb. I really want to read Robin Hobb's Farseer trilogy, and then her other books that come after that. So this is 6 books that have to do with the Farseer trilogy. And I want to dive into that world too. So I want to do that next year. So other than that, that's really pretty much it. I'm going to wrap this up. I've been talking for over 30 minutes. That is it. Have you read any of these books or any of these books on your reading list? Or have you read or planning to read any of the books that I just mentioned that I still plan to purchase this year? But other than that, I'm really going to try to be good. I'm probably not telling the truth. So I am going to wrap this up. Please leave me a comment. I always enjoy chatting with you guys when I can. It sometimes does take me a few days to get to the comments because, again, I'm still talking. But I see how social media is a lot of work. It's not difficult. It's a lot of work when it comes to the administrative side of things. Keeping up with comments on Instagram and messages on Instagram and keeping up with comments here. Even with some of my Instagram stuff, dealing with invoices and stuff, it is work and it takes time. So I get to stuff when I can. Thank you for your patience. I am done. All my links are down below, my blog, my Instagram. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Adios.